Admiral Koss-Vaar had conquered 14 worlds. This was not a boast, it was a resume, stated in the same matter-of-fact tone with which a surgeon might note the number of successful procedures or an architect the number of completed buildings. Koss-Vaar was a professional. Conquest was the profession. 14 worlds was an excellent record by any standard, achieved over a career of careful preparation, precise execution, and the particular quality of controlled brutality that the Chi-Vi-Shar Dominion considered both an art form and a civic duty. The Dominion's doctrine was clean. Identify resource-rich worlds with insufficient military capability to resist. Arrive in sufficient force to preclude it. Organize opposition. Establish dominance in the first 72 hours before the population could coordinate a response. Consolidate. It was not complicated. It was not elegant. It worked because it was fast, and because fast was the variable that determined outcomes in planetary acquisition. 14 worlds. Never failed. The 15th world was chosen by the same criteria that had produced the previous 14. Resource profile, population density, estimated military capability, projected resistance timeline. Earth checked every box. 1. Resources. Exceptional. Population. Significant but distributed. Military capability. Notable but limited to conventional weapons and a modest orbital defense. Network. Projected resistance timeline. Standard. The model said 7 to 10 days to organizational collapse, 20 to 40 days to full compliance. Koss-Vaar approved the mission with the confidence of a being who had done this 14 times and knew exactly what 40 days of organized human resistance looked like. She did not know what it looked like. Nobody had told her about the real estate agent. The fleet arrived in orbit at 300 local time, which was standard. Night landings reduced initial organized resistance. 47 vessels. 300,000 troops. The most capable force the Dominion had deployed in 2 decades. The orbital defense network was neutralized in the first pass. Efficiently as planned. The global communication disruption array went active on schedule, yamming military and government frequencies across the primary population centers. Landing craft deployed to 6 sites simultaneously, each chosen for proximity to major population centers, open terrain, and strategic infrastructure value. The first anomaly occurred at Site 3. Site 3 was a large open area near a major transportation hub in the continent designated North America. The tactical maps showed it as an ideal landing zone, clear of structures, accessible, with good sight lines in all directions. The landing craft touched down at 312, exactly on schedule. By 317, there were humans at the perimeter. This was not in itself the anomaly. Some local population response within minutes of landing was expected. The anomaly was the nature of the humans at the humans. Perimeter. They were not armed. They were not uniformed. They were not, as far as the landing force's sensors could determine, military, police, or any category of official response personnel. They were carrying signs. The signs had text on them. The Dominion's translation systems, calibrated for Earth's primary languages as part of standard pre-mission intelligence preparation, rendered the signs text as follows. Prime development opportunity, 47,000 acres, zoned for mixed use, motivated seller. Attention visitors, we can help you find your dream property. First contact special, 0% down, flexible terms, ask about our galactic community rate. Welcome to Earth. Population, 8 billion potential customers. Your opportunity awaits. Landing Force Commander Drev Tal looked at the translation output. He looked at the humans with the signs. He looked at the translation output again. He opened a channel to Fleet Admiral Koss-Vaar. Admiral, We have a situation at Site 3. Define situation, she said. The local population has arrived at the perimeter, he said. They are not hostile. They appear to be attempting to sell us something. A pause. Say that again, Koss-Vaar said. They have signs, Drevtal said. Commercial signs. They appear to be offering us real estate. The silence on the channel had a quality that Drevtal, in 14 years under Koss-Vaar's command, had never heard before. Commander, she said finally. Admiral, are the humans aware that we are an invasion fleet? Drevtal looked at the 47 vessels visible in the sky above the landing zone, the 300 landing craft, the ground forces in full combat. Configuration deployed across 6 kilometers of perimeter. I believe they are aware, Admiral, he said, and they are offering us real estate. Reproducibly. Yes, Admiral. Another silence. Proceed with standard protocol, Koss-Vaar said. Establish perimeter. Secure the zone. The commercial activity is... She stopped. Document everything. Will, il said. Analyze it afterward. There is cared. Understood, Drevtal said. He proceeded with standard protocol. The humans with the signs did not leave. They moved to the edge of the established perimeter and continued to hold their signs. Several of them had begun talking to each other. One of them appeared to be on a communication device. Several more humans arrived. Some of them also had signs. Some of them had what appeared to be brochures. By 430, there were approximately 200 humans at the Site 3 perimeter. None of them were armed. All of them appeared to be, in some professional capacity, attempting to facilitate commercial transactions. Drevtal filed his first anomaly report and tried to focus on the standard protocol. Site 3 was not unique. This became apparent over the following 6 hours as the reports came in from the other 5 landing sites. Site 1, in a coastal region designated East Asia, had attracted a group of humans who appeared to be offering guided tours of the local area. Several of them had laminated cards. The cards, translated, contained pricing information and what appeared to be customer testimonials. Site 2, in a region designated Western Europe, had a different situation. A group of humans had arrived with what appeared to be food. Significant quantities of food in containers, organized and distributed with the efficiency of people who had done this before. The food was the Dominion's biochemical analysts. Confirmed, safe for consumption by several of the Dominion species. How the humans had determined this, in the 6 hours since the fleet's arrival, was unclear. Site 4 had a small gathering of humans who appeared to be journalists. They had recording equipment and were broadcasting, apparently live, to audiences that back. The communication disruption array was not fully suppressing because the humans were using communication infrastructure that the disruption array had not been calibrated for. Several of them were interviewing each other in the absence of anyone from the landing force agreeing to speak with them. Site 5 had, improbably, a children's school group. The teacher had apparently decided that an alien landing in the field adjacent to their school was an educational opportunity. The children were drawing pictures of the landing craft. Site 6 had 2 humans who had arrived, examined the landing zone, produced measuring equipment, spent several hours taking measurements of the terrain, and were now consulting a large rolled document that the translation system rendered as a zoning map. Admiral Koss-Vaar reviewed all 6 site reports. She had been awake for 22 hours at this point, managing the orbital operation, coordinating the landing, running the standard protocol that was supposed to be producing the standard results. The standard results were not being produced, not because of military resistance. There had been some in the early hours, and it had been handled as the models predict. The government emergency response was activating as anticipated. The military response was unfolding within expected parameters. On those axes, everything was normal. But every standard protocol in the Dominion's conquest doctrine assumed that the civilian population would respond to an invasion force with one of three behaviors: panic and flight, hiding, or organizing into informal resistance. The humans at sites 1 through 6 were not panicking. They were not hiding. They were not organizing resistance. They were, with a consistency that was either deeply strategic or completely insane, treating the invasion fleet like a business opportunity. Koss-Vaar called in her senior intelligence officer. "Explain this to me," she said. Senior intelligence officer Prethdahl had been with the Dominion's intelligence division for 20 years. He had produced the intelligence assessment for Earth. He had prepared the mission briefing. He was confident in his work. He was less confident now. "The behavior is consistent," he said carefully, "with a specific documented human commercial psychology profile. Humans have a well-documented tendency to attempt to extract economic value from unexpected situations. It's in the pre-mission files. The section on human economic behavior is in Volume 3. Right. I've read Volume 3, Koss-Vaar said. Volume 3 did not prepare me for this. No, he admitted. Volume 3 documented the behavior in normal commercial contexts. We did not model its application to... He paused. To this context. To being invaded. Correct. Humans respond to being invaded by trying to sell things to the invaders. Prethdahl considered the weight of the past 6 hours of reports. Some of them, he said, the ones who are doing that appear to be civilians, private individuals, with no military or government role. They appear to have made independent decisions to approach the landing sites and attempt to establish commercial contact. Why? Koss-Vaar asked. We have a theory, he said. Give it to me. He pulled up the relevant section of the intelligence file. Human economic culture has a significant element of what they call entrepreneurship, the identification of opportunities for value creation in novel situations. We believe the humans at the perimeter sites have identified the invasion as a novel situation containing potential economic opportunities and have moved to act on those opportunities before other potential competitors. Now? What? Koss-Vaar looked at him. They're trying to get first mover advantage, she said. On us. On the invasion fleet that is currently occupying their planet. That appears to be the assessment. Yes, Prethdahl said. Koss-Vaar sat with this for a moment. Who, she said finally, is buying real estate from an invasion fleet? No one yet, Prethdahl said. But, here, he pulled up another report. The humans at Site 3 have been negotiating with each other about appropriate commission rates in the event that any of the landing force express interest. Koss-Vaar looked at the report. She looked at it for a long time. They're fighting over the commission, she said. Yes, Admiral, before anyone has expressed any interest. Yes, Admiral, while being invaded. Yes, Admiral. I need some time, Koss-Vaar said. The decision to make contact with the civilian entrepreneurs was not officially in the Conquest Protocol. It was made by Drev Tal at Site 3 on his own initiative at 900 on the second day, because the humans with the signs had been there for 18 hours and were showing no signs of leaving, and he had been watching them long enough to develop a theory that he wanted to test. The theory was, they knew something he didn't. Not about military strategy, not about resistance, but about something. Because no rational being showed up at an invasion perimeter with real estate listing, unless they had a calculation running that Drev Tal hadn't accounted for, and Drev Tal prided himself on accounting for all the calculations. He walked to the perimeter. The human who approached first was a woman in a dark jacket, carrying a tablet. She was perhaps 50 years old. She had the quality of someone who had been waiting for exactly this moment and had prepared for it. Good morning, she said, in the common galactic trade language, which he spoke with the accent of someone who had learned it recently but practiced it thoroughly. Verzicht yourself and now. Well, no. I'm Linda Chen. I specialize in large-scale land acquisition and commercial development. I understand you may be interested in Earth as a strategic asset to time. I'd like to talk to you about how we can structure that interest in a way that works for everyone. Now, hey, Drev Tal looked at her. We are an invasion fleet, he said, in the same language. I know, she said, which is why I want to talk about structure before this gets complicated. We are not interested in negotiating the terms of our conquest, he said. 14 planets, she said. He stopped. Yet, we have your fleet's registry, she said pleasantly. We've been building a profile since you entered the outer system. 14 prior acquisitions. Which, means you understand that acquisition is only the first phase. The ongoing management of acquired territories is where most conquest operations encounter their significant costs. She opened her tablet. I have some numbers I'd like to share with you about what the management cost looks like on a planet with 8 billion people who have decided to be difficult. And then I have some alternative numbers about what it looks like if we can reach a commercial accommodation that gives you what you actually want, the resources, without the management overhead. Now do you know it right? Drev Tal looked at the tablet. Despite himself, he looked at the numbers. The ongoing resistance cost projection on the left, she said, is based on your 14 prior operations. I've indexed it to Earth's population density and infrastructure complexity. The accommodation scenario on the right is based on a joint resource development model that I think you'll find. You modeled our operational costs, Drev Tal said slowly. I had 18 hours, she said, and a very good research team. He looked at the numbers again. They were accurate, more accurate than he was comfortable with. Whoever had built these models had access to information about Dominion operational costs that they should not have had. How did you? He started. Galactic Community Open Source Intelligence Databases, she said. Your prior operations are fairly well documented. The Thalmuri have a comprehensive conflict cost archive. She smiled. We're very good at research. Me and Drev Tal stood at the perimeter of his invasion zone, looking at a spreadsheet that a human civilian had built in 18 hours that accurately modeled his operational costs and was now being used as a negotiating instrument. He opened a channel to Admiral Koss-Vaar. Admiral, he said, you need to see this. The full account of what happened over the next 72 hours would require more space than is available here. The short version. Linda Chen's model was good, not perfect. There were assumptions that she'd made that Koss-Vaar's people corrected in the first working session. But the underlying logic was sound, and the corrected version was, if anything, more unfavorable to the conquest scenario than the original. The conquest protocol assumed a resistance timeline of 7 to 10 days to organizational collapse. What Linda Chen's model, and, once they had access to it, the Dominion's own analysts showed, was that Earth's organizational structure was not the kind that collapsed. It was distributed, redundant, and had been stress-tested against disasters and conflicts over thousands of years of human history to a degree that made it genuinely resistant to the top-down disruption that the conquest doctrine depended on. 8 billion people, every one of them capable of making Linda Chen's decision. Show up at the perimeter and try something. The food people at Site 2 had fed 3,000 Dominion troops by the end of Day 1, not as a military strategy, but because there were hungry troops at A. Perimeter and feeding hungry people was something humans did. The troops had eaten it. It had been very good. The school group at Site 5 had, by Day 2, been invited by troops who were bored and who had been trained in a doctrine that did not have good answers for. Children drawing pictures of your landing craft. To tour the outer perimeter of a landing vessel. The teacher had brought the children. The children had asked approximately 400 questions. The crew of the landing vessel had answered approximately 200 of them. The other 200 required translation, assistance that was not yet available. The journalists at Site 4 were still broadcasting, and Linda Chen and the 47 other humans who had shown up at Site 3 with commercial proposals had been in working sessions with Dominion officers for 60 hours and had produced a draft framework document that Koss-Vaar was reading with the expression of someone whose professional world was reorganizing itself around new information. The framework was not a surrender. It was not a conquest. It was something that the Dominion's legal team had spent 6 hours confirming had no precedent in their institutional history. It was a deal. Not a great deal for the Dominion. The resource access terms were significantly less favorable than conquest would have produced. But the cost modeling showed, clearly and reproducibly, that the deal terms were better than the alternative, which was 8 billion humans, none of whom were planning to leave their home, deciding individually and collectively to be as difficult as possible for as long as necessary. Koss-Vaar read the framework. She thought about 14 World. She thought about the standard protocol and the 72-hour dominance window and the 7 to 10 days to organizational collapse. She thought about the food at Site 2, which she had eaten herself on day 1, because it was there, and it was good, and because she was a professional, not an ideologue. She thought about Linda Chen, who had shown up at an invasion perimeter with a tablet and 18 hours of research, and the complete conviction that there was a deal to be made, and who had been right. The Dominion did not send me here to make deals, she said. I know, Linda Chen said. She was sitting across the negotiating table. She had been in this room for 12 hours. She looked alert. She had coffee. But the Dominion sent you here to get resources. The deal gets you resources. The conquest gets you a very expensive ongoing conflict with 8 billion stubborn people. She paused. I've run the numbers on the stubbornness. It's not a short conflict. Koss-Vaar looked at the framework again. She thought about the real estate signs at 317 on the first morning. About her own voice asking, are the humans aware that we are an invasion fleet? They had been aware. They had shown up anyway, with signs. She signed the framework. The Tevishar Dominion's 15th acquisition was, by every metric in their operational history, anomalous. It was the first acquisition that did not involve a conquest. It was the first that produced ongoing revenue rather than a one-time resource seizure. It was the first that required the Dominion to establish a permanent diplomatic office rather than a garrison. And it was, within 20 years, the most economically productive relationship the Dominion had with any acquired territory, because the humans, once there was a framework and a relationship and a deal, extraordinarily good at finding ways to make the deal more valuable for everyone involved. Linda Chen became the first human member of the Tevishar Dominion's Economic Development Council, a position she held for 17 years, and used, with a characteristic thoroughness, to restructure most of the Council's frameworks in ways that the other members found simultaneously infuriating and effective. Drev Tal was promoted. He was also, for the rest of his career, asked at every professional gathering to tell the story of the perimeter at 317. He always did. He always included the part about the commission dispute. Admiral Koss-Vaar retired with 15 acquisitions on her record. She described the 15, in every account she gave of her career, as the most educational. When asked what she had learned, she said, I learned that there are species that respond to force with force, and species that respond to force with flight, and one species that responds to force by showing up with a spreadsheet and negotiating the term. I was not prepared for that species. No one was. We should have been,